Welcome to IttocStories. Today we will be exploring the legends and myths surrounding the obscure town of Freyberg, a town on the cusp of Twilight's Veil where children disappear from their beds, where the robed figures of the night stalk the new arrivals in the ever-changing town. The dark secrets kept by those close to the god they call Krampusnacht, the bringer of the apocalypse. Join us through the journey of the unfortunate souls who have moved to this cursed and forsaken town. Albrecht's gentle smile never wavered as he pressed the glowing branding iron to the boy's chest. The hiss of searing flesh drowned only by George's raw scream. Shallow cuts opened across his skin, blood dripping into carved channels that pulsed with unnatural life. I'm writing this because someone has to. If you're reading it, it's already too late for me, but maybe not for you. Run. Burn this if you can. Just don't touch what I touched. Don't say the words I said. Don't trust the kindness here. My name was George. I was 12 when I left the sun-bleached coast of Australia for the Schwarzwald Vale, the rotting edge of Freyberg where the Black Forest leans in like it's listening. Dad took a lectureship at the university. Forgotten engineering, he called it. Eyes bright with secrets he wouldn't share. Mum wanted to nurse again once we settled. I only knew the sun was gone forever. There's no real daylight here. A bruised purple sky pressed low. Snow falls in slow, silent flakes that dissolve into gray fog before touching the ground. The rain never stops. It smells of iron and old incense. Chalk sigils on the cobblestones bleed crimson when stepped on. Abandoned cathedrals gape like broken mouths, their spines cracked, altars inside ringing by black candles that weep fat onto stone. Our house sagged at the forest's edge, half-timbered, windows always fogged. That first night, I heard the chanting, low, rhythmic, a heartbeat under the earth. I tried to make my room mine, pinned up posters of classic horror monsters, taped a faded photo above my desk, me, Mom, and Dad, and the beach back home, all sunburnt and laughing. I wore a woven bracelet from my best mate in Australia, red and black threads, fraying now. I touched it whenever the dark felt too heavy. The paper curled in the damp. Ink bled like blood. A few days later, I heard voices outside. Kids my age kicking something through the mist. I needed air that didn't taste of rot. Two boys. Finn, blonde hair, sharp brown eyes, lean like a blade. Benedict, taller, broader, smile that never quite warmed. Everyone called him Ben. The ball rolled to my feet. I kicked it back. My accent made them laugh, gentle at first. "You're the new one," Ben said. "From down under. Survived the monsters yet? Kangaroos will kill you faster than anything here," I bragged. Finn grinned. "We'll see." They showed me the town. Narrow alleys where people hurried past, heads down, clutching bundles. Market stalls sold withered roots, bone charms, vials of dark liquid that smoked in the cold. Candles burned on every corner in perfect circles. Staring too long made my eyes water. Then the library. A stone and timber cabin, older than the town itself. Her Albrecht ran it. Ancient, gentle, eyes milky but bright. His family had owned the land for centuries. Old blood, old money. He made hot chocolate for children, something sharp and herbal beneath the sweetness. He noticed my sketches. "You draw what you see inside." he told me once, tracing a horned figure I'd inked. Most children only pretend. You already feel him, don't you? I blushed. No adult had ever looked at my monsters like they were real. He gave me a small book. Black cover, no title. Inside, delicate drawings of the horned one birthing stars from open wounds. I hid it under my mattress. I spent hours there, safe for the most. Ben and Finn dragged me into the forest one gray afternoon. Trees knitted overhead like a cathedral roof. No birds, only dripping water and distant bells. We wrestled, laughed. Ben speared a slug and chased Finn, both shrieking. I wandered a few steps away. In a moss-slick rock segment with a sag of cloth and a ragged doll. One button eye missing. Stuffing leaked like pale guts, mixing with tiny painted stones and a snip of auburn hair. My color. I picked it up anyway. The world lurched. Something heavy crashed above. I screamed, fell backward. A body swung from a high branch. Human-sized red robes soaked and tattered. Hood swallowed the face. But gray beard wisps curled out, and curved horns jutted like blackened bone. Ben and Finn ran up, breathing hard. Prank, Finn said too quickly. Older kids, winter tradition. Ben poked it with a stick. Scare the little ones straight. But the thing was warm. The mask breathed faintly, wet leather skin, hollow eyes, glistening jaw gaping in a silent scream. That night, the chanting swelled until the walls shook. I dreamed of horns punching through my skull from the inside. But now, school's beginning. Dim halls lit by guttered candles. Teachers with branded foreheads, swirling marks, weeping clear fluid. Lessons on the old awakening. How the horned one slumbered beneath the forest, dreaming of return. How blood rites thinned the veil. How children made the purest vessels. I laughed it off. Weird local customs. Though my skin itched constantly. Tiny cuts appeared on my arms overnight. Healed wrong, raised, twisting like roots. I started drawing sigils in the margins of my notebook without realizing it. Raw meat began to taste better than anything Mom cooked. I gagged at vegetables. One night I confessed to Ben and Finn in the library after hours, sharing stolen hot chocolate. I'm scared, I whispered. The dreams. Something's wrong with me. Ben put a hand on my shoulder, warm, steady. We've got you, mate. Nothing here can touch us if we stick together. Finn nodded. Always. I believed them. Herr Albrecht smiled when he saw us. Brothers already, he murmured. Then my parents didn't come home. I waited until the purple sky darkened to black, called their mobiles, straight to voicemail. I ran into the rain-slick streets, knocked on neighbors' doors. Faces peered out, then slammed shut. I followed chalk sigils that bled brighter than usual, leading toward the forest. I found their car on a muddy track. Doors yawning open, seats wet, dark, sticky. On the passenger seat, Mom's nurse ID soaked crimson. I sank to my knees in the mud and sobbed until my throat bled. No one came. I was alone. The itching became fire. In the bathroom mirror, my pupils were slitted. That same week, I returned to the library seeking answers. Found the hidden stairs behind the children's shelf. Descending into stone tunnels, echoing with chants. Walls lined with tiny hooks, tiny cloths hanging. Decades old, stiff with dried blood. At the center, a black altar veined red, carvings of goat-headed figures birthing stars from screaming mouths. Her Albrecht stood robed, surrounded by acolytes I knew, the baker, my teacher, neighbors. They held the child down. The branding iron glowed. The hiss, the scream, it burrowed into my brain and nested there. I fled. Shadows in the forest, tall, horned, chains rattling, herded me back to the empty house. Krampusnacht came. Streets filled with them, dozens in fur and horn, bells clanking, birch wisps cracking, faces ash white, mouths sewed shut with black thread. Ben and Finn led the pack that kicked in my door. Ben's hand, the same one that comforted me, gripped my arm hard enough to bruise. "We've got you," he said again, smile sharp now. Finn's eyes were hollow. Always. They dragged me through the rain to the overgrown graveyard behind the ruined cathedral. Roots twisted into perfect sigils, fresh graves gaped like hungry mouths. Cultists formed a circle, hooded, chanting in a tongue that tasted of rust and graves. Herr Albrecht held the skin-bound book. He smiled gently like a grandfather. "You picked up the lure, George. The doll binds the curious. Your blood called him. Now you'll help him fully awaken." They stripped me in the freezing rain, pressed the iron to my chest. I smelled my own flesh cook, screaming until something tore inside. But the hunger that followed was worse. Vast, ancient, horned, stirring below, dreaming through my veins. They chained me to the altar, cut shallow lines across my skin, my blood dripping into carved channels. The earth trembled. Real Krampus poured from the trees, flesh and fury, hooves cracking stone, eyes dying coals. One leaned close, breath of rot, tongue black and lolling. It whispered my true name, the one the entity carved into my soul. I screamed until my voice shattered. Then something inside answered with joy. Bones cracked, lengthened, skin split, coarse black fur pushed through like thorns. Horns punched from my forehead, curling, heavy, dripping blood. Hooves burst my feet in wet pops. A tail lashed behind me. The cultists fell to their knees, weeping in rapture. I was no longer George. I was a vessel. The horned one rose through me, partial awakening, enough to feed. The massacre began. I know it tore through them. Blood sprayed hard across frozen ground. Screams turned to wet gurgles. Ben tried to run. I caught him, lifted him until his feet kicked air, looked into those hollow eyes. He whispered, voice breaking, "We were friends!" I sobbed once, my last human sound. Then his spine snapped like dry wood. Finn dropped to his knees, offered his throat with trembling hands. I took it. When the false dawn came, still no sun, only deeper purple, I stood alone in the graveyard, body wrong, mind fracturing. The entity recedes at dawn, but never fully. It waits, hungers. I fled into the forest, but the sigils are branded in my flesh. The chants pulse in my blood. Sometimes I watch new families arrive. Children wander too close to the trees. I hang the lures, ragged dolls, one eye missing, waiting for the next curious hand. If you're reading this, you've already stepped on a bleeding sigil. You've already heard the bells. Run. Please, don't pick it up. The horned one is waking, and it's so very, very hungry. Blades clashed in the flickering dark. Devin buried his knife in an acolyte's throat. Thick ichor sprayed. Sam's disruption chant crackled mid-syllable. I lunged at Bellanot, drove the blood-slick blade into his heart. He laughed. The wound sealed instantly. The right needed willing blood. You just gave it. The ground shuddered. From the forest edge came thunderous roars, trees splintering, hooves pounding. I never wanted to move to Freyberg. My parents sold it as a fresh start. The moment we crossed the black forest's edge, the light died. Perpetual twilight swallowed the city, a bruised, lidless sky that never let the sun break through. Rain fell in cold sheets over cracked cobblestones. Every doorway held a flickering candle altar. Every pavement bore chalk sigils, goat-headed spirals that bled dark red when stepped on. Abandoned cathedrals had become open shrines, their spires draped in black ivy. Graveyards spilled into the streets, roots knotted into runes that pulsed like slow heartbeats. And beneath everything, the old subway tunnels carried distant chants that scraped inside your skull and stayed there. Dad enrolled me late at St. Sebaldus Academy, a decaying Gothic fortress that smelled of damp stone and old incense. The uniform was stiff black wool, collars high enough to feel like a garrote. Every student bore faint brands on their wrists or throats, thin horn curves that looked freshly burned. That first night, I sketched the thing I'd glimpsed in the woods on the drive in. Robed, horned, half man, half goat, hands reduced to stubs beneath tattered sleeves. The pencil moved on its own until sleep dragged me down. I woke to frost on the inside of the window, though the air outside was only wet and gray. My breath fogged. Another breath answered, slow, wet, inches from my ear. Something crouched beside my bed. Skin hung from its skull like wet parchment. Empty sockets fixed on me. Gray beard matted with grave dirt. Yellowed claws resting on my blanket. Nails crusted black. Its mouth gaped, rotted. Breath rolled over my face. I tried to scream. Nothing came. Claws closed around my cheeks, pulling me toward that black abyss. Morning light, gray, reluctant, snapped me awake. Dad flung the curtains. The thing was gone. But on my left cheek, 4 faint bruises bloomed in the shape of claw marks. My sketchbook had fallen open. The figure now screamed from the page, mouth stretched impossible, one stubbed arm reaching out as if it could claw through paper. Dad picked it up. Dark one, mate. But I'm glad you're drawing again. Means you're settling. I slammed the book shut. The claw bruises throbbed. At breakfast, Mom fussed over the uniform. I felt like an offering, gift-wrapped. Dad drove me through streets where hooded figures knelt at every corner, lighting black candles. Devin and Sam waited at the bus stop, the only 2 kids whose eyes still looked human. Devin grinned, slinging an arm around me. Easy term left, mostly coasting. Sam glanced at me. Speak for yourself. The bus lurched past occult markers, stalls draped in wet tarps selling bone talismans, vials of thick ichor, masks carved from real goat skulls. At the academy, students moved like sleepwalkers. Devin and Sam split to different homerooms. I took the only empty seat, front row, desk etched with a faint sigil that smeared warm under my fingers. The lunch tour, courtyards, overgrown stone altars still dripping from morning rites. Devin vaulted into a moss-covered stump. Site of my legendary victory over a shadow rat. Sam snorted. You squealed and climbed a tree. We laughed until something wet slammed into my chest. A severed goat's heart, still twitching, smeared dark blood across my uniform. Laughter rose from a cluster of older students. Their leader, tall, dirty blonde hair, horn brand livid on his throat, smiled thin. Welcome, newcomer. He pressed the heart harder against my sternum, whispering words that tasted like rust on my tongue. The black goat of the woods takes its teeth. Something cold wormed under my skin, threading toward my heart. Sam stepped forward, voice shaking with rage. Let him go, Victor. Victor's hollow eyes flickered to Sam. Old blood won't shield you forever, little archivist. I shoved Victor hard. Get off me! He only smiled wider. Devin hurled a graveyard apple, exploded across Victor's face like spoiled brains. Then blades flashed, ritual knives, rune etched, blood splattered the oval stones. Teachers in black robes descended, chanting low syllables that froze the fight mid-swing. In the principal's office, incense burners choked the air. The marking was deliberate, the principal sighed. Those boys are suspended. Their brands will answer for it. He looked at us. Violence feeds the goat. Remember that. He handed me a spare uniform. The fabric carried old blood stains no amount of washing had removed. The last period. Assembly in the Great Hall. Walls crawled with glowing sigils. The teacher introduced her Nicholas Bellinot. Thick gray beard, eyes too bright, smile too warm. It never touched his eyes. He greeted us like a beloved grandfather, and then his gaze locked on me. Alexander Langenstein, he said softly, though no one had told him my name. Freyberg nears its 900th year. Founded in older packs, your project, research one of our eternal traditions, or one of our eternal figures. His smile showed teeth like yellowed ivory. Choose carefully. Some things choose back. That night, the growl lived inside my chest. I woke clawing my forearms. Thin horn ridges pushed beneath the skin, beating blood. Devin texted me. Don't go to the library. Bellinot runs the inner circle. Sam, the assignment is the hook. Resist it. But the pull was iron chain around my ribs. I had to understand what I'd drawn. I went alone, rain needling my face, chants rising from basement windows. The library squatted on the city's edge, a manor swallowed by ivy, windows painted black. Inside, the air thick with dust and grave spice incense. Shelves of books bound in pale leather. Bellinot waited. The marked boy. He took my wrist, thumb tracing the budding horn lines. You drew the herald perfectly. Few ever see it clearly enough. He led me down stone stairs to a shrine chamber. Candles threw goat shadows across walls. Robed acolytes knelt, branded, flesh bared, eyes milk blank. On the altar lay my open sketchbook. The herald writhed on the page as if alive. Sheeb Magorath stirs, Bellanot whispered. Every 9 centuries the veil thins. The city's founders promised fresh souls to keep the goats sated. Newcomers are ideal. Vision slammed into me. Tentacled masses deep in the forest, birthing hooved horrors. Centuries of quiet sacrifice. The cycle running low. My veins blackened horns, split skin with wet pops. I ran. Through occultist markets, vendors shrieking offers of relics, buyers bartering strips of their own skin. Cultists poured after me, chanting, Yashib Magrath! Alley walls bled. Shadows hissed my name. I stumbled into a subway tunnel, mass chants echoing below. Hundreds of voices braided into one hungry note. The possession sank deeper. I saw myself years from now, robed, branded, carving the next newcomer. Devin and Sam found me half collapsed against a pillar. Sam's face was pale. There's one reversal right left. Old archivist counterspell. But it has to be you who cuts the sigil. They dragged me to an abandoned side cathedral. Windows shattered, altar cracked. Candles guttered. Foul wind. Acrid smoke coiled with rot. Sam pressed a ritual knife into my hand. Deep. Over the heart. Recite the binding backward. If you stop, it takes you forever. Devin lit the candles, hands trembling. You're stronger than that thing, Alex. Fight it. I stripped off the shirt. Black veins webbed my chest, more nubs bled. I carved the first line. Pain like melted wire. The voice inside roared, Stop! Serve! Become! Second line. Blood sheeted down my ribs. I faltered. Devin grabbed my wrist, steadying. Keep going. We're right here. Third line. My vision blurred. The goats, 1,000 young, lowered in my ears. I screamed the final reversal syllable. For one heartbeat, the poles snapped loose. Then the cathedral doors exploded inward. Victor led them, eyes fully black now, hordes fully grown. Bellanot behind, beard writhing like living roots. Slab shoved me behind the altar. Run! Blades clashed. Devin buried his knife in an acolyte's throat. Ichor sprayed like oil. Sam chanted disruption, voice cracking. I lunged at Bellanot, drove my blood-slick blade into his heart. He laughed, the wound sealed. The right needed willing blood. You just gave it. Ground shuddered. From the forest edge, roars, hooves thundering, trees splintering. The Dark One poured into the streets. We fled into the rain, now red. Sigils flared across the city. Open sacrifice began in every square. The graveyard swallowed us. Roots rose, forming living sigils that trapped our ankles. The herald stepped from mist. My drawing made flesh, sagging skin. Empty sockets, claws extended. It whispered my name with my own voice. Inside, something ancient answered. Horns burst fully through my skull. Vision went black-green. Last thing I saw through fading human eyes, Devin's face as I seized him by the throat. Sam scream, Alex, no! Find it! Then only hunger. The veil closed. Freyberg endures under its endless twilight. The black goat is fed for another 9 centuries, and I am its new herald, listening, whispering, waiting for the next newcomer who draws its face. Maybe you already have. Chaos exploded as we charged in, Victor overturning braziers that sent flames licking across robes, Humphrey slashing his palms to smear reverse sigils that shattered the ritual circle in bursts of acrid smoke. I reached the altar, knife gleaming in my grip, but the whispers roared into a deafening scream. Bound upon the blood-slit stone lay a terrified child, eyes wide, while the air itself pulsed with ancient hunger. Sacrifice awakened complete. My arm rose against my will, blade poised over the child's throat. I still remember the day we arrived in this cursed city. The sky was a bruised purple, locked in perpetual twilight. No dawn, no true night, just an endless bruised dusk bleeding into deeper shadows. Rain fell in thin, cold sheets, turning cobblestones slick and shining under the sickly glow of gas lamps. Chalk sigils lined every alley, drawn fresh each morning, writhing like living things if you stared too long. My mom said it was a fresh start after Dad left us back in Ireland. But the moment the train hissed into the station, I knew this place wasn't a beginning. It felt like the end of the world had already happened here, and no one had bothered to tell the rest of us. School started the next day, and I hated it instantly. On the very first afternoon, I got into a fight with an older kid named Oliver. He had hollowed-out eyes, skin too pale, and faint red lines circling his throat like fresh brands. We traded punches in the yard until teachers dragged us apart. The principal, a tall, gaunt woman whose smile stretched too wide, looked at me. Humphrey and Donald, the only 2 kids who hadn't walked away when the fight started, and said, "Community service. Your report to the Archive of Eternal Whispers after classes." The archive wasn't a library. It was a decaying Gothic manor squeezed between an overgrown graveyard and a derelict playground where swings creaked in empty wind. Inside, the halls stretched further than the building should allow, shelves towering under books bound in strange, soft leather. Candles burned in every alcove, their flames throwing shadows that curled into horned shapes across the walls. Mr. Knott ran the place, tall, bearded, ash-gray streaks in his hair, eyes like dying coals. He smelled of incense, old paper, and something metallic. Blood, I realized later. He greeted us with a warm, grandfatherly smile that never reached those amber eyes. "Welcome, boys," he said. "You'll dust, sort, shelve, and perhaps learn something of the old ways." We started the next day. Mom dropped me off in her new work dress, her clumsy nature providing a coffee stain on the left side of the collar. "No more fighting! Paul, promise me!" Inside, Donald was already waiting, broad-shouldered from years on his family's farm, grinning to hide his nerves. Humphrey stood quieter, pale, always watching the shadows as though they watched back. The work was easy at first, dusting shelves, returning books. But the volumes whispered when you touched them, soft chants and languages that made my temples ache. Mr. Knott drifted between us, fingers tracing invisible patterns in the air. First week passed in a haze, and things began to change. One evening, alone in the stacks, I found a book that hadn't been there before. Black leather, embossed with curling horns. Inside were hand-drawn rituals, circles of blood, masked figures dancing around screaming victims, and at the center, a towering horned thing devouring children marked as wayward. The caption beneath read, "The Horned One awakens through the blood of the flawed." I slammed it shut. My hands shook the whole way home. That night I dreamed of bone cracking under my scalp as horns pushed through, skin splitting, fur sprouting in burned patches. I woke gasping, fingers clawing at my head. Certain something had burrowed inside. The next afternoon, I heard the children in the playground next door. They weren't playing. They stood in a tight circle around a crude altar of sticks and black candles, singing in low, guttural voices. Horned One, have you any souls? Yes, sir, bags brimful. For the lighters and the fighters, for those who stoke the flames, for naughty souls who bear the blame. Their parents sat on benches, eyes glazed, nodding along. One woman turned toward me and smiled, teeth filed to sharp points. I told Donald and Humphrey. During our break, Humphrey's voice dropped to a whisper. That city's older than maps admit. The cabal of the Horned Veil, they keep the old rites alive. Donald's face hardened. Mr. Knott's one of them, high up. I laughed, nervous, disbelieving. But that same afternoon, while dumping trash out back, Oliver found me again. He looked worse, skin gray, black veins threading beneath, the brands on his neck now raw and twisting into tiny horns. His voice came layered as if two throats spoke at once. You don't belong here, outsider. He slammed me against the bin. Pain exploded through my ribs. As he hit me, he whispered words that sank straight into my mind like hooks. Bind the vessel, off at the blood. Donald roared out of nowhere, tackling Oliver into the mud. They fought savagely, Donald's farm strength against something inhuman. Oliver broke free and fled, laughing a wet, cackling, cracking sound. Mr. Knott appeared moments later. He knelt, pressed gentle fingers to my broken ribs. Agony flared, then a spreading cold like ink flooding my veins. Euphoria followed, brief and sickening before wrongness settled in its place. You'll be fine, he said softly. Just bruises. The Horned One protects his chosen. I stood. The pain was gone, but deep inside something stirred, a whisper, barely audible. Mine. That night, we cleaned vandalism from the outer walls, smashed eggs, but also fresh sigils drawn in blood. One showed the Horned One, long tongue lolling, sack bulging with writhing shapes. Beneath in red, he comes for the marked. Later, alone with Mr. Knott, I asked, what is the Horned One? His smile vanished. For a heartbeat, his eyes went hollow. Old stories, pagan filth the church buried, an entity from before time, chained by forgotten gods, feeds on the sinful, the wayward, to break its bonds. The cabal preserved the rites, blood offerings in hidden basements, binding ceremonies in cathedrals turned into shrines. Then the smile returned, thin and strained. Some knowledge binds you, boy. Best leave it. That weekend, we took the train to the shadowed forests beyond the city. Trees twisted into living sigils, roots coiled around ancient altars still slick with old blood. On the ride, I told them what Mr. Knott had said. Humphrey spoke first. Every winter solstice, troubled kids vanish. Fighters, liars, rule breakers. They call it the Horned Takings. Donald stared out the rain-streaked window. My brother, Lucas, 2 years ago, same age as us, got into fights. Volunteered here for a month, then gone. We found his shoes in an abandoned subway tunnel, arranged in a perfect circle, chalk sigils all around, chants echoing for days afterward. His voice cracked on the last word. Humphrey went on. The Cabal believes misbehaved youth make perfect vessels. The rituals escalate. Marking, possession, final offering. Each soul weakens the chains. I felt it then, an itch beneath my skin, like something long and thin uncoiling. We found a clearing deep in the forest, a stone altar blackened with centuries of blood. Candles burned with steady black flames, carvings ringed the base, masked figures dancing as horns erupted from victims' skulls. That night, back in our tiny flat, the whispers grew louder, visions came. Me, fully horned, dragging bulging sacks through fog-choked streets while the city screamed. Monday brought us back to the archive. Mr. Knott announced a special project on local traditions. Humphrey chose recipes, old dishes that were really offerings in disguise. Donald picked biographies of saints, Cabal leaders long dead. I tried to choose something safe, but my head moved on its own, writing the rights of the Horned One. Mr. Knott's eyes gleamed. Ambitious! The days that followed blurred into fever. I descended into hidden basements through trapdoors behind shelves, poring over forbidden tomes. Rituals in detail, circles of blood, incense ground from bone and dried heart, chants that promised power beyond morality. The signs of possession were listed clearly. Unnatural healing, whispers offering strength, urges to harm, to offer. I felt everyone. My hands twitched toward knives when Donald laughed too loud. I woke from dreams of devouring Humphrey's face. One night, alone, I found a relic on a pedestal, a chain of linked finger bones. The moment I touched it, fire raced up my arm, then ecstasy. A vision unfolded, the Horned One vast and star-born, tentacles of living shadow spilling from cosmic rifts, demanding not punishment but apocalypse. A world remade in eternal twilight, every soul bound in willing servitude. The Cabal wasn't preserving folklore. They were summoning the end. Every volunteer was marked. Troubled kids funneled here, healed by Mr. Knott's touch, infused with fragments of the entity. Oliver had been an earlier vessel, failed, partially possessed, sent to hunt the next. Donald cornered me 2 days later. Your eyes, Paul. They're darker, almost black. Humphrey's sleeves had ridden up. I saw faint red lines beginning on his wrists. We have to stop it, he whispered. Break the binding before the solstice. We planned to strike that night. After closing, smash the great altar in the deepest basement where chants rose every evening. But the Cabal moved faster. That afternoon, Oliver returned, leading a pack of acolytes, teens with hollow eyes and branded flesh. They stormed the playground, dragging screaming younger children toward the archive's side door. We fought like animals. Donald swung a broom handle, cracking skulls. Humphrey hurled ancient tomes that burst into choking black smoke when they struck. I faced Oliver again. His tongue had lengthened, forked, dripping. Join us, vessel. The Horned One chose you over me. His strength was monstrous. Claws raked my arms. Blood hissed where it touched stone. The whispers roared. Kill him. Offer him. Feed. I fought the urge. Barely. Drove a jagged candle shard into his side. He shrieked and fled into the fog. Mr. Notch emerged, surveying the blood with quiet pride. "Good," he murmured. "The blood flows. Escalation." He touched my wounds. They sealed instantly, but the cold sank deeper, straight to bone. The itch under my scalp became sharp points pressed outward. We slipped into the basement that night, hearts hammering. The vast chamber flickered with hundreds of black candles. A circle of robed acolytes chanted around the central altar. Bound upon it was a child, one of the playground singers, barely 10, eyes wide with terror. Shadows thickened above the altar, coalescing into towering horns. We attacked. Chaos erupted. Braziers overturned, flames licking robes. Acolytes lunged with ritual daggers. Humphrey lashed his own palms, smearing reverse sigils across the blood circle, breaking its power. Donald barreled into Mr. Notch, driving him back. I reached the altar, knife in hand. The whispers became a scream. Sacrifice, awaken, complete the ritual. My arm rose, not toward the ropes, but toward the child's throat. I saw it then, my reflection in the altar's stone, eyes solid black, horns beginning to break through skin. Horror flooded me. With the last shred of will, I turned the blade inward. I carved deep, a reverse binding sigil into my own chest. Each cut agony beyond words. Blood poured, steaming on stone. The horned one's roar shook the chamber. Shadows recoiled, chains of light snapped back into place across the void. Acolytes screamed, their brands burned away. Mr. Notch lunged, face twisted in rage. "Fool! You only delay!" Donald tackled him to the spilled flames. Robes ignited. The high priest burned without sound. An explosion of shadow and reverse chants tore through the basement. We grabbed the child and ran upward as the archives shuddered, books igniting in spontaneous fire. We burst into the street. Fog closed behind us like a mouth. Distant howls rose. Perchin masks running wild. Or something far worse thwarted for now. We ran until our lungs bled. Chalk sigils washing away under rain and frantic feet. But the whispers remain deep inside. Not silenced, strengthened. The points beneath my scalp have broken skin. I feel them lengthening each night. Mum sleeps in the next room, breathing soft and trusting. The knife is on my desk. Sometimes I don't remember putting it there. He's coming. Not for the naughty, but for everyone. And I am the door he will open. Drained bodies sway from chains overhead, their faces frozen in rapture and ruin. The center chained to a stone altar, the pale girl called Pearl stared with eyes of pure void. Ere Nicholas stepped from the shadows, robes open to reveal a torso etched in glowing scars. "You've come at last," he said softly, voice warm as a grandfather's. "The path chose you well. Krampus awaits, not as servant, but as god." My name is Jeffrey, or at least, that's what it used to be. The world didn't end in fire or flood. It just dimmed. One day, the sun refused to rise fully, hanging low and bruised purple on the horizon, as if embarrassed to show its face. Years passed like that, perpetual twilight bleeding into everything. Cities crumbled into sprawling decay, streets filled with fog that smelled faintly of burning herbs and old blood. Abandoned cathedrals became hollow shells, their altars crusted with wax from candles that no one remembered lighting. In alleyways, people left offerings, black feathers, shards of bone, chalk sigils on the walls that wept thin trails of crimson when the rain fell. we called the dimming the veil. A thinning between our world and whatever waited on the other side. Something ancient, patient, and hungry. I came to Freyberg, chasing ghosts of the past. The town squatted in the ruins of the old black forest, its timber-framed houses sagging under vines and moss. With me where Daryl, Kenneth, and Fred, old friends but before the veil fell, we told ourselves we were researching forgotten painters, men like Max William Roman, who had captured landscapes bathed in unnatural light. But really, we were running from the gray emptiness that had swallowed everything else. One night, huddled around a campfire in an overgrown ruin outside of town, Daryl pulled out his battered notebook. The flames danced low, throwing shadows across his face that made his eyes look fever bright. "Listen to this," he said, voice low and excited. He leaned forward, the pages crackling as he turned them. "It's from Roman's diary. Found it in the trader's stash last month." He read it aloud. "In the deepest thickets, opposite the maiden thorn, a tree twisted like a screaming woman. I found a path. You may walk beside it, but never upon it. It leads to the place where the gods abandoned their work, an unfinished edge bleeding into the void." Kenneth snorted, poking the fire with a stick. "This sounds like the ramblings of a madman high on absinthe." Fred chuckled uneasily, glancing at the fog pressing in around us. "In this world, voids are real enough." I forced a laugh, but Daryl's eyes didn't leave the page. "We're desperate for something, aren't we? Anything to break this endless twilight." We laughed it off that night, but the words lingered. The next morning, we followed vague directions from town whispers, past crumbling mills and forgotten shrines, until the fog parted just enough. There it was, the Maiden's Thorn. The tree erupted from the earth like a nightmare frozen mid-scream. Its trunk twisted grotesquely, branches contorted into limbs reaching skyward in agony. Roots knotted across the ground in patterns that hurt to trace, arcane symbols pulsing faintly as if blood moved beneath the bark. Across from it, the path. It was narrow, barely wider than a man's shoulder, lined with flat stones etched in runes. Looking directly at them made my eyes water and my head throb, like staring into a light too bright and too wrong. The air hummed here, a low, rhythmic vibration that settled in my chest, almost like distant chanting. Daryl stepped forward first, tracing the edge with his boot, but never crossing onto the stones. "We walk beside it," he said, echoing the diary. His voice trembled with something between fear and exhilaration. We followed the single file, the forest closing in quickly. Trees leaned inward, their trunks blackened and slick with moisture. Branches wove overhead into a canopy that blocked even the weak purple light, plunging us into deeper gloom. The ground softened underfoot, sucking at our boots. Then the candles appeared. They lined the edges of the path, black wax stubs with flames burning cold blue, steady despite the damp air. No wind touched them, no one had lit them, as far as we could tell. Kenneth froze. "What the hell?" Ahead, through the mist, figures moved. They were robed in rough dark cloth, hoods pulled low. As we crept closer, still beside the path, never on it, we saw their skin branded with swirling marks that glowed faint red, like embers under flesh. Their eyes were hollow pits, mouths moving silently in what looked like prayer. They knelt around small altars built from piled bones, animal, human, impossible to tell. One figure raised a jagged knife, slicing deep into his palm. Blood welled dark and thick, dripping into a shallow bowl carved from stone. The others chanted soundlessly, rocking in rhythm. My stomach turned. Fred gripped my arm hard enough to bruise. "Cultists," he whispered. "We'd heard rumors in the outer ruins. The Order of the Unfinished. Worshippers of something called the Horned Unmaker, an entity from before creation itself, starving for completion. They formed rituals to tear the veil wider, feeding it with blood. Always escalating, never enough." He backed away slowly, hearts pounding, but Darrell lingered, staring with wide eyes. "This is it," he breathed. "The edge Roman wrote about." That night, in Freyberg, crumbling in, a once grand building with peeling wallpaper and creaking floors, we tried to sleep. The fog pressed against the windows like it wanted in. I woke to scratching. It was faint at first, under my skin, wet, insistent, like nails dragging across raw flesh from the inside. I sat up in the dim lantern light, sweating despite the cold. In the cracked mirror over the dresser, I saw them, faint lines on my arms, pale at first, then reddened, swirling patterns, just like the brands on the cultists. The itch became a burn. Kenneth burst into my room minutes later, face pale. "Jeffrey! Your eyes!" I looked again. My pupils had dilated hugely, swallowing the irises until only thin rings of color remained. "What the fuck is happening?" Fred demanded when we gathered in the common room. Darrell just stared at his own arms, where similar marks were beginning to appear, fainter on him, but there. We needed answers. The town's derelict library was an old cathedral, its pews replaced with sagging shelves of molding books. Mocking Christmas decorations still hung from years ago. Withered evergreens draped in cobwebs, rusted bells that tinkled softly with no breeze. We searched frantically through the day, pulling forbidden tomes from locked cases. In the basement, down narrow stone stairs that smelled of damp earth and incense, we found a false wall behind a stack of crates. Prying it open, revealing a hidden chamber. Dust choked the air. On the pedestal sat a book bound in skin that felt warm to the touch, almost alive. The pages were yellowed, inked in what looked and smelled like blood that hadn't fully dried. We read by lantern light, voices hushed. The book detailed the Order's history, founded centuries ago when the veil first thinned. Their leader, Herr Nicholas, the town librarian. To outsiders, he was kindly, an old man with a white beard telling stories to children about saints and gifts and the old winter traditions. But the book revealed more. Nicholas cast no reflection. We tested it later with Darrell's ancient Polaroid camera. In photos of group gatherings, he was a blank space where he should have stood. Diary entries, copied from his own hand, described the rites. The entity wasn't just the Horned Unmaker. The oldest texts called it Krampusnacht, twisted from forgotten pagan roots into something vast and cosmic. Not a mere punisher of naughty children, a devourer of unfinished worlds. It required blood to awaken fully, escalating sacrifices, animals first, then wanderers, then the devoted themselves. One entry froze us. The boy Lucas wandered too close to the path years ago. His essence fed the awakening. He is chained now in the deep shrine, his cries blending with the chants. Fred went white. Lucas! I knew him. Kid from my neighborhood before everything fell apart. Went missing one winter. Everyone said he ran away. Daryl's eyes gleamed again. We have to see the shrine to prove it. We scouted the path again the next day, driving an old rust bucket truck we'd scavenged. Rain slicked the ruined roads. As we rounded a bend near the Maiden's Thorn, another truck, abandoned for years, vines growing through its windows, lurched suddenly into motion. No driver. It just moved. It slammed into us head-on. Metal screamed, glass shattered, the world flipped. I came to in the hospital, ruins on the edge of town. Strapped to a gurney with needles in arms that felt wrong, heavy, foreign. Whispers filled my head. Join the circle. Offer more. Escalate. The brands had spread across my chest now, itching fiercely. Herr Nicholas visited that evening, smiling benevolently under his white beard. He looked like a twisted Santa in his old-fashioned coat. Rest well, children, he said softly. The solstice approaches. Gifts will come. He pressed a cold iron key into my hand. For the library's restricted depths, knowledge is the greatest offering. We used it that night. Under cover of thick fog, we broke back into the cathedral library. The hidden room behind the basement was larger than we thought. Walls covered in murals depicting the horned Unmaker. Massive form with branching antlers, goat legs, chains rattling with draped soles. Its eyes were black voids swallowing light. The book there outlined the final plan. A deep cave shrine in the mountain peaks, the ultimate rite in winter solstice, Christmas Eve in the old calendar. A complete circle of marked souls to fully awaken Krampusnacht and tear the veil forever. We couldn't wait. That night, we fled town toward the mountains. Freyberg watched us go. Hollow-eyed figures lined the streets, acolytes in everyday clothes, holding black candles that burned with blue flame. They chanted low, a building hum that vibrated in your bones. The path called to us now. We walked upon it, no choice. Straying made the edges bleed shadow, pulling at our ankles. The forest fought back, branches whipped like birch switches across our faces, drawing blood. Shadows twisted into elongated figures, cloven hooved things dragging rusted chains that clinked in the mist. Visions hit me hardest. My skin split in hallucinations, horns pushing through my skull with wet cracks. Blood dripping from my eyes as I glimpsed the Unmaker's realm. Endless twilight plains where souls were chained in eternal circles, flayed alive only to heal and feed it again. Daryl laughed through it all, manic. It's beautiful, don't you see? His brands glowed brightest, pulsing like hearts. Deeper in, we found forgotten subway tunnels, old lines swallowed by the forest. Echoes carried real chants now. Dozens of robed cultists swayed in unison, knives flashing as they cut palms in rhythm, blood pattering onto stone altars. We hid inside passages, breaths ragged. Fred whispered a memory then, voice breaking. I saw Lucas once, after he vanished. Peeked through a cellar window. He was chained, begging for it to stop. Kenneth admitted something too, eyes distant. My father joined them before he disappeared, said it was the only way to finish what the gods started. The cave mouth yawned ahead in a high mountain clearing ringed by overgrown graveyards. Roots twisted graves into sigils. Some mounds were fresh, earth disturbed. Inside, the air was thick, dripping stone walls, acrid smoke from incense braziers mixed with the stench of rotten, fresh blood. Bodies hung from chains bolted into the ceiling, drained husks, faces locked in twisted ecstasy and agony. Lucas was there, barely human anymore, skin branded everywhere, eyes hollow sockets, whispering, "More. We need more." Center stage, a figure chained to a central altar, a girl, or what looked like one, pale skin threading with black veins, eyes pure void. "Pearl," Nicholas called her, emerging from the shadows. His robes hung open, revealing a body mapped in scars and glowing brands. "You've come at last. The path chose you well," he explained calmly, as if lecturing children. The order had fed the Unmaker for generations, thinning the veil. Krampusnacht wasn't a servant, it was the god. Full awakening needed a perfect circle, souls marked and brought willing or broken. Pearl lunged suddenly, chains snapping like thread. She wasn't a victim, she was the vessel. Claws erupted from her fingers. She tore into Nicholas with a frenzy, rending flesh. Blood sprayed on stones in hot arcs. He smiled even as he died, gurgling, "Complete." Fred charged her with a boot knife, screaming Lucas's name, but she turned, body twisting, bones cracking, horns sprouting, legs bending into hooves. Daryl stepped forward, laughing wildly. His brands ignited fully, light pouring from the wounds. He joined her side. Kenneth grabbed me. "Run!" He bolted for the entrance, but the cave shifted, walls breathing, stone rippling like flesh. My visions peaked. Bones cracked for real now, skin tore as something pushed from inside me. Hungry. Behind us, Pearl, no, Krampusnacht, roared. The voice layered with 1,000 ancient tongues. "One more day!" The solstice wasn't complete yet. We burst out into the fog somewhere, collapsing in the graveyard. But the brands burned hotter now. The whispers demanded more. Escalation. I feel it growing inside, antlers pressing, hunger rising. The veil thins further every hour, and tomorrow is the final night. If you hear chants in the fog, if candles flicker without wind, if a path appears beside you, do not walk it. For the Unmaker calls to you, and he hungers for your soul.
I'm so glad you were able to make it to the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. You could be the one that sends the channel to the moon. Don't miss the next grand adventure. So always, tune in next time. Have a good one.